Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NIFA Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan informational webinar. Thank you so much for being here. We are really eager to share with you this process of developing this plan and also everything that went into the plan and what it actually says. Please use the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask questions throughout the presentation. And we will host a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We'll go through the questions in order to the best of our ability. In accordance with federal civil rights law and U.S. Department of Agriculture civil rights regulations and policies, the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees, and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender identity, including gender expression, sexual orientation, disability, age, marital status, family and parental status, income derived from a public assistance program, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity in any program or activity conducted or funded by USDA. Not all bases apply to all programs. Remedies and complaint filing deadlines vary by program or incident. This slide contains contact information for individuals with disabilities to request reasonable accommodations. Language access services will be provided to limited English proficient individuals upon request. Anyone wishing to file a complaint can utilize the phone number, fax number, or postal mailing address listed on this slide. We will send these slides out to you at some point after the presentation. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kevin Kephart, the Deputy Director of the Institute of Bioenergy, Climate, and Environment.
Thank you very much, Summer, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today on this webinar to outline the tremendous amount of work that NIFA staff and our stakeholders have participated in for our climate adaptation and resiliency plan at USDA NIFA. I'm most excited about you learning about the plan itself, but also getting a chance to hear from some of the leaders within NIFA itself that put a lot of work into drafting this plan. Now, we want to kick it off with some orientation about NIFA at a glance and discuss a bit about what our mission is and what our vision is, and also what our strength is in the overall research landscape here in the United States. First of all, our mission is to invest. That's the key word here. Invest in and advance agricultural research, education, and extension to solve societal challenges. So those are our three functional areas that we support. Much of the work that you and the audience do: research activities, education, such as classroom education or other formal education, and then extension with our stakeholders across the landscape. In doing so, our vision for this is to catalyze transformative discoveries from the work that we invest in, education, and engagement to address agricultural challenges. NIFA's strengths are immense in getting this work done. Actually, NIFA's investments support the work of about 16,000 faculty in universities across the country. We support work in over 3,200 counties across the U.S., involving 32,000 extension staff. Some of our work focusing on positive youth development, such as 4-H, impacts about 6 million youth a year. All this sums up to about 75% of the U.S. agricultural public R&D is conducted in this space that NIFA is a part of, along with our stakeholders and land-grant institutions and non-land grant colleges of agriculture. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So in doing so, in this very large network that NIFA is a part of, and many of you in the audience are a part of, we help to make investments in addressing challenges and problems that are either local priorities. Some of these are we expect these to be state-based priorities, like with capacity funds. But then also, being a federal agency, NIFA also addresses challenges and priorities of a national and global importance. Currently, that boils down to these 5 priorities as a federal agency. We support work for workforce development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Nutritional security is a priority for us. Trying to bring about new market opportunities or take advantage of market opportunities, especially for rural communities. And then also at the heart of this discussion today is climate change and all of the related vulnerabilities and threats that we have to deal with. This is a figure of, as you see, 5 rectangles or 5 boxes, but think of it more of as a Venn diagram where these issues interact with each other and overlap. Next slide, please. So the job at hand today regarding our plan, the NIFA Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Plan, is really an instruction that came to us as a federal agency. That instruction began with an executive agencies to develop adaptation plans, climate adaptation plans. That was led over a year ago by USDA as a department developing their climate adaptation plan, and we'll make some reference to that. After the department developed their plan, then it was up to the agencies to further provide more detail as an agency of USDA on developing a plan. So the instructions that came to us as a regulation for USDA is, first of all, identify how climate change is likely to affect our ability as NIFA, our ability to achieve our mission, accomplish our operations, and policy and program objectives. So that was a big driving force to the work that we undertook for several months. Secondly, we were asked to develop, prioritize, implement, and evaluate actions to minimize climate risks and exploit new opportunities. So an assessment of our vulnerabilities and opportunities and what actions to take to address all of those. Thirdly, better ensure that taxpayer resources are invested wisely and that USDA services and operations remain effective. And then lastly, update and provide progress reports on status of implementation annually to USDA and make sure that we're doing so transparently with our stakeholders, which is really the purpose of today's webinar. Let's move on to the next slide. So with that, we'll have several people in several of our leaders here at NIFA involved in today's presentation. The next person that I'll hand it off to is Keisha Corbin. Keisha is a program specialist in our Institute of Youth, Family, and Community. So Keisha, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks. Next slide, please. So the adaptation planning process is composed of 5 steps, starting with describing goals and objectives, moving to assessing climate impacts and vulnerabilities, looking into adaptation actions and implementation, monitoring and evaluating adaptation actions, and synthesizing cross-cutting topics. Our cross-cutting topics include environmental justice, workforce literacy, and USDA climate hubs. To further emphasize our effort, we created a climate change priority area team. Next slide, please. Our climate change priority area team stretches across NIFA institutes and divisions. This team works to address specific climate-related tasks and directives through a combined effort and diverse expertise. Next slide, please. As Kevin spoke about, goals and objectives of the NIFA plan were already set by a USDA department regulation. Our information gathering and analysis were meant to inform steps 2 through 5. We first started with information gathering and synthesis. We gathered information both internally and externally from stakeholders. Internally, we sent an institute-wide survey to assess the broad knowledge of climate change of USDA employees, and we hosted staff discussions. To gain stakeholder feedback, we hosted a stakeholder listening session to assess common vulnerabilities and actions across all information streams. I will now hand it over to Dr. Megan O'Rourke, National Science Liaison in the Institute of Bioenergy, Climate, and Environment.
Okay, sorry, the perpetual problems with keeping ourselves on mute. So as Keisha had described, we went through this pretty extensive process of gathering feedback and creating this plan. And first up, we identified 6 key vulnerabilities to climate change that we felt NIFA could play a role in. So first we have water quality and quantity, agro-ecosystem productivity and sustainability, food and nutrition security, resilience to extreme and variable weather, the education pipeline, and continuity of operations at NIFA. And as we considered all of these vulnerabilities, we really kept in mind, how do they affect underserved communities? And how do we really include underserved communities in the process of coming up with solutions? Next slide. So one of the first things we did was map the existing priorities that NIFA has to how do we address these vulnerabilities. And I wanted to quickly go through potential programs and priorities that we have in case the audience isn't aware of the diversity of them. So for water quality and quantity, we have the AFRI Foundational Research Program A1411. That's specifically about water quantity and quality. We have SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, under Section 8.4, and that addresses conservation and natural resources. Under agroecosystem productivity and sustainability, we have a variety of programs. I want to call out specifically the AFRI Foundational A1451, Sustainable Agroecosystems, Health, Functions, Processes, and Management. And we have SBIR 8.2, which is Plant Production and Protection Biology. And I've actually been looking at the chat. There's been a couple questions about, what about the organics programs? What about the SARE programs? And we definitely want to include those. We're reviewing the authority for adapting some of the verbiage in those programs because they're different than the AFRI programs, which are more flexible. So resilience to extreme and variable weather, we have a new priority, an AFRI cross-cutting A1712 priority that's out in FY22 now. It's the rapid response to extreme weather events across food and agricultural systems. Next slide. For addressing food and nutrition security, we have the GUSNET program, the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentives Program, which aims to create incentives for folks to buy and consume more fresh fruits and vegetables. We have the Community Food Projects Competitive Grant Program, which is directed towards community organizations to address food insecurity in the local communities. We have FNEP, which is the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, which is, as it says, to expand educational programming, to increase awareness about nutrition, and to address food insecurity in low-income communities. So to address the education pipeline related to climate change, we have a variety of programs. We have the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, which is to train up the next generation of the farmer and rancher workforce. We have an AFRI cross-cutting program, A1721, which came out in FY21 and is available here in FY22, which is the Extension, Education, and USDA Climate Hubs Partnership Program, which links university education and extension with the climate hubs. We have the AFRI Education and Workforce Development RFA, and that has many priorities through the pipeline from K through 12 education, community colleges, research experiences for undergraduates, pre and postdoc fellowships, as well as direct professional workforce development programs. And then I want to draw the attention to NextGen. It's a new program that's come out that's been funded by the American Rescue Plan. So it's a big program, $250 million. If you haven't heard much about this, there's actually going to be a webinar this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern that we encourage you to attend if you can. And this program is to provide scholarships and professional development for MSI institutions to really diversify the workforce in ag and forestry. Next slide. And then we have a variety of both competitive and non-competitive programs that are a little less specific to vulnerabilities, but are generally applicable to addressing climate change. So we have the AFRI A9201 program, which is SAS, Sustainable Ag Systems, and that's our large cap $10 million projects to address various priorities, including climate change. We have the AFRI cross-cutting A1556, and that's Regional Innovation and Demonstration of Climate Smart Agriculture for Future Farms, CAF. We have the SCRI program, Specialty Crop Research Initiative. So we want, the whole suite of fruits and vegetables production systems to be adapted to climate change. And we have a new bioproducts pilot development program, BPP. And then I suspect many of you know, but we want to not ignore the capacity programs. About half of NIFA's budget goes out through non-competitive capacity programs. And these can be utilized to address climate change mitigation and adaptation and resilience. So we have the Hatch program that supports agricultural research. We have the McIntyre-Stennis program that supports forestry work. And we have the Smith-Lever program that supports extension. Next slide. Okay, so we identified vulnerabilities, we've identified existing priorities and programs that can address those vulnerabilities. We also went through and thought carefully about different actions that we can specifically take to address climate change adaptation. And those actions began to fall within 4 broad categories, which are new NIFA programming, strategic planning, stakeholder outreach and education, and organizational effectiveness. And I don't want to get too in the weeds here. We encourage you to download the climate adaptation plan. There's a really nice matrix at the end that has all the actions that we propose to take and milestones and metrics and the organization of how we go about these. But we worked really hard to make these actions, well, actionable, so clear, succinct, something that can really be achieved and not just kind of pie in the sky stuff, because we see this climate adaptation plan not as something to be put on the shelf. In fact, we'll be reporting yearly up to USDA and the White House about our progress towards these actions in our plan. Next slide. And then we've also considered all the identified actions that we propose to take and how they will promote environmental justice, how they will promote a literate workforce to address climate change in the future, and how we can partner with the USDA climate hubs so that we're more efficiently and effectively translating research, whether it be from universities or from the Ag Research Service, ARS, and how we're getting that information out there through extension and through the climate hubs. And the colors here are just really to illustrate how the different umbrella category actions cross-cut across these different kind of ideas and ideals that we want to pursue. Next slide. So where are we at with this plan? We've been working on this since this spring. We're really proud to kind of share with you some of the milestones and achievements that we've had so far. So you may be aware that NIFA is standing up a climate change division. We've been putting personnel in that division. We're actively looking for a climate change division director for that. We have a climate change priority team. So essentially we have personnel across NIFA from all our different divisions and institutes. We're working together, we meet regularly, we're sharing information, we're learning from each other, we're sharing ideas to really make sure that climate change is transdisciplinary throughout NIFA. We've been working to increase stakeholder awareness of climate relevant funding opportunities. So this spring we had a webinar kind of talking about some of our specific new opportunities for climate change. And we include this as part of our outreach to our stakeholders so that we're really keeping everybody in the loop. This is an open dialogue. We want to hear from you and we want to make you aware of what opportunities there are. Hopefully you've seen that in FY22, we've really worked to integrate climate change more broadly than I think in recent years we've seen throughout RFAs and priorities. And then in the near term, we're working on increasing the welcome of climate change work, the language of climate change, even more broadly throughout RFAs. AFRI was kind of low-hanging fruit. We have flexibility there, but we're also looking at the authorities to include climate change language and other RFAs. We're also working on sponsoring a 10-year climate change roadmap. Essentially, we're working with university partners and university leadership. We want to create a vision for research, education, and extension for the next 10 years that people can get on board and really work towards addressing climate change issues in the next decade. And we hope to have something available and published and able to read out with the research, out in the university community by late 2023. Next slide. Kind of a longer term vision of things that we want to accomplish is assessing climate change program impacts. So it's pretty easy to say, what are we funding? But really we want to know, what is the impact of what we're funding? What are the results? What are the changes that we can help instigate through strategic funding? We also want to work on open data and data visualization. Some of you may be familiar with the CRIS database and may realize or have experienced that it can be difficult to go through that data. So we're trying to create dashboards where it's easier to understand where the investments are going for climate change. And then with hopefully perhaps future resources, we want to tackle some big things. We want to really understand how our climate change funding is affecting underserved communities, how potentially we can increase positive impacts on environmental justice. And we've realized that this is a big, weighty issue to tackle. We don't take it lightly, and we realize that a lot of thinking needs to go into how do we measure this? How do we understand this? And of course, we're always looking for new funding opportunities. It's always contingent on constrained financial resources, but to the extent possible, as new legislation is passed, we'll always be looking for where can climate change fit into new opportunities. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Kipper here to round us out of where we're going next.
So thank you very much. We'll have a couple slides on process. Tries to give a easy to understand graphic on process that we have. And by the way, I've been looking at some of the comments or questions in Q&A. We're looking forward to addressing those. And so when it comes to process, what you have right here reminds me a lot of what's done over and over again in certain aspects of research, whether it's machine learning, maybe it's spectroscopy, maybe it's other things, but you start out with assessing a problem, you design how you want to address it. That's what we've been doing. You implement the process, you monitor it, you evaluate it, you do some ground truthing, and then you adjust and provide that data that you've gathered along the way. You recycle that data through the whole process to make it better. So that's continuous improvement, just continuously improving through this cycle. So once we assess a problem, we start attacking it, we learn along the way, we monitor what we're doing, we'll keep in touch with you and our stakeholders, we'll evaluate and make adjustments as we go forward and cycle that back around. So kind of what's called a double loop learning, and you can have there's a reference to this visual that we have here. Next slide. So we move from the action design to an internal decision matrix, which we are developing, and that's part of our plan. That was actually published as part of the plan through our decision matrix and move forward for effective implementation. So this won't be the last resource that you'll have to interact with us on climate adaptation, either through annual reporting, or I'm sure there will be future webinars to have more conversation about this as we go forward. Next slide, please. So to learn more, I think in the chat, we also provided a link to our climate adaptation and resilience plan. So if you follow that link, you can actually download a PDF of that and have that as a resource available for you. I know I go there quite a bit myself when questions come up, and I'm still doing that. You'll also learn who the principal players were, the principal contributors were at NIFA in developing this plan, and who it was that we reached out to along the way. I think that's our last slide. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Summer. I think that's who I'm going back to, Summer, and then we'll try to address some of our questions that have come through the Q&A box. Oh, to Keisha. Sorry about that, Summer. So we'll go to Keisha.
No problem. So the first question, which Megan already briefly touched on, is why OREI, ORG, and SARE why are they not discussed in the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the plan was we needed to be really clear about what was realistic, what we knew we could accomplish, and we were just being careful. So the AFRI authority is fairly flexible. We know we can go in there and we can make changes, we can make priorities, of course, balancing the budget along the way. Whereas OREI and the ORG and the SARE programs come from different authorities. And so we're just being really careful that working with our policy division to make sure that we can change the language in there, but absolutely they're on the radar.
I'll jump in with an addition to that. I've seen some other related questions in the Q&A. What about programs such as Evans Allen? And why not a broader conversation about capacity funds? It's not that we have decided to not discuss any program within NIFA. NIFA is a unique agency in the research and science landscape, in that we have 80 different authorizations from Congress. And within those 80 different authorizations, we have to be very mindful about being consistent with what the congressional authority, the congressional language to us says. And so it's very, very different from program to program. I'll say any of those 80 are important to the climate adaptation and resilience plan. In the course of the last several months, it's just that we need to hear from you. We need to be interacting with the audience on all of those 80. So let's take SARE, for example. I see Clayton Marlowe's in the audience. Clayton's very active in the West when it comes to SARE. SARE has the various regions that are involved in that. SARE is a unique program in that it's interaction with farmers on the ground, having farmer involved research and extension projects. It's a unique program. Does it have a place in climate adaptation? Absolutely, absolutely. And so we'll need to intensify that conversation there, but it'll largely be up to those that lead SARE to determine or to work with us on how it fits into the plan. So that conversation still needs to happen. I see another one on Evans Allen, just an incredibly important capacity program with our stakeholders and partners in the 1890 research community. Do they have a role in this? Absolutely, absolutely you do. When it comes to capacity programs, those are different than competitive programs in that those are allocated to the various partners, whether they're states on Hatch and Smith-Lever, or they're allocated to the 1890s based on the congressional authorization. What they do and what those programs are about are trying to identify what the priorities are for their various jurisdictions, as opposed to a federal agency saying, these are the priorities, tell us how you're going to address them in your state. It doesn't work that way with capacity funds. We want to know what your priorities are in your state, and how you went about determining what those were, and you report that through the plan of work. So it's a different process, but again, does that have a role to play in all of the aspects of climate adaptation and resiliency? Absolutely, absolutely. So what this webinar does is it begins many of those conversations, and we're looking forward to getting into that. So thank you.
And I'll maybe chime in too on thoughts that Dr. Kephart are presenting. As we've discussed, environmental justice is a cross-cutting theme, and we want to be really careful and cognizant about the conversations we have about the finances and funding for minority serving institutions. We want to make sure that those conversations are had before we announce plans. We want to do that in the right way. So we do not want to overstep and in any way dictate this is what we're going to do and this is how funding is going to be spent with our traditionally underserved communities.
Thank you, Megan. Another question, under climate change adaptation actions, who are the stakeholders you're working with to elevate knowledge of climate relevant funding opportunities? That was directed to you, Megan.
Okay, I'm going to admit, could you repeat the question, Keisha? I'm sorry.
Yes. Under climate change adaptation actions, who are the stakeholders you're working with to elevate knowledge of climate relevant funding opportunities?
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just jump in on that. We'll use our developed processes that we have, Clayton, for making stakeholders aware of climate relevant funding opportunities. That involves leadership in organizations such as the SARE organization. We have our experiment station network that we're routinely in communication with, our extension network, those in academic programs, those in the minority serving institutions community. So that's the 1890s. That's going to be the 1994 tribal colleges and universities, as well as the vast network of Hispanic serving institutions. So we work with all of those in getting the word out as far as what our funding opportunities are. More and more, our funding opportunities, announcement of them include webinars just like this one. So plenty of opportunity to learn more about details as these opportunities come about.
Thanks, Kevin. Do you want to add anything, Megan? Okay, the next question I will direct to you, Kevin, and Megan, you could jump in if you would like. Do you think certified organic farming is a climate smart and friendly system of production, and therefore should promoting organic agriculture be a priority?
So are there climate smart and friendly aspects of production for organic farming? Absolutely, absolutely. We don't dictate what those are, but we're certainly, as a science, research, extension, and education agency, open to supporting those through our various programs that we have. So yes, climate smart agriculture is definitely a part of organic production. Now, another part of that question was promoting, and that's not what NIFA's role is promoting one aspect of production over another, but certainly we support the activities in research, education, and extension that go along with that.
And I'll just add an anecdote. I've come to NIFA from academia just, about 2.5 years ago now with the reorganization of NIFA. And I think it's really important, and I've learned a lot. And there's a clear division. We at NIFA, we in the federal government, we don't lobby, we don't promote one thing over the other. We're here to implement and to clarify and to streamline processes. And so, yeah, I just second Kevin of like, we absolutely are not promoting one thing over the other, but we're recognizing the strengths, certainly, of organic agriculture.
Thank you both. Megan, I'll direct this question to you. Just wondering if the action plan is linked to SDG's Sustainable Development Goals in terms of national indicators.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is absolutely a wonderful idea. It's been discussed at the USDA level with the overall USDA plan. And so I'll say that our action plan here at NIFA wasn't developed with that in place, but I think, the long-term goal certainly of an adaptation plan is to promote the sustainability goals of, reducing poverty, clean water access. And so it relates, but I think that's a good point that we haven't necessarily specifically made that relationship. Thanks.
Okay, we got another question. How can institutions of higher education get involved with the climate change roadmap? And
That's from-
I was going to address that to Kevin.
Yeah, you bet. And so that's still in its formative stages right now, Allie. So Allie, thank you for asking. We have been actually working with land grant partners from across the country. It's in formative steps right now, but our plans is to conduct what we're calling a climate summit. It won't be a singular event. It will likely have at least 3 or 4 different stages in it so that we can have a conversation, which is really the essence of what a summit is. And that's to establish a dialogue. So that dialogue will certainly address the activities or the functions that we've been talking about. Well, what are the important research questions when it comes to the challenges of climate change? What types of resources do we need to build to empower the Extension Service in their mission regarding objective climate information? How about land grant colleges and non-land grant colleges of agriculture and bolstering their climate-related educational programs that we have? But then there's all of these interactions that were on one of the slides that Dr. O'Rourke presented on cross-cutting issues such as environmental justice and the Justice 40 initiative. How do we bring about and provide better support, and how do we make our vulnerable communities more resilient to the threats of climate change? Those are important questions, and that needs to be part of a climate summit or a climate dialogue as well. So that's what's ahead of us. And hopefully we'll be able to discuss with more details and an announcement in the coming maybe Q1 of the next fiscal year or somewhere in that time.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so the next one is kind of a long one. It is addressing organic systems. So I'll read this, and if you need me to repeat it, just let me know. It says, I understand that it's not up to NIFA to promote organic over other systems. However, with organic capturing 6 to 7% of food market share, while only 2% of NIFA funding addresses organic systems, this suggests that NIFA is perhaps inadvertently depromoting or underserving the organic sector. If research investment in organic were commensurate with market share, the potential for organic to build resilience would be realized. Shouldn't a general statement that NIFA would increase its investment in organic agriculture be a part of its climate resilience plan?
Well, and perhaps, but as I mentioned before, NIFA has 80 different authorizations provided by Congress, and that's what we follow. So Congress authorizes a program, they later appropriate money to that program, and then we make those investments as instructed through the authorizations. And that's pretty much how we conduct that. There's not an analysis that's done within NIFA to make adjustments. We're forbidden from taking money from one of those 80 and processing it or directing it into another one of the 80 authorized programs. We can't cross those lines, and we can't augment or change what the congressional intent or the instruction of the authority is. So that's pretty much what we do. That is what we do. We follow the authorizations that come to us from the authority given to us by Congress.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, I would just add that absolutely our work can strengthen the evidence base for linking organic to climate smart agriculture. And so
Mhm.
there are avenues with the existing programs to really elevate the relationships.
Thank you, Megan. The next question I'm going to direct to Megan. Invasive pests are a cross-cutting challenge. Forests and crops that we're glad to see addressed in the plan under agro-system production and sustainability. How do you see NIFA operationalizing addressing this in the future?
Yeah, thank you. So within NAFRI, we have specific programs for pests, natural enemies, and for pollinators. And so you'll see right now in the FY22 language, and it may come up in FY23, is that there's specific call outs for opportunities within those priority areas to work to, how are invasive pest spreading? How may pollinator diseases be exacerbated by climate change and overwintering capacity? And so absolutely, it's an important priority. And we feel like there are mechanisms to address it. And we want to get the word out to applicants that climate change is a huge issue. It's cross-cutting. We want to see applications related to climate change throughout our priorities. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. The next I will direct to Kevin. Is there a clearinghouse of information that cooperative extension system employees and stakeholder or producer groups can access, which communicates some of the information and innovation that comes with these investments? Do you partner with Climate Hubs on this?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. Actually, I should have Megan jump in on this as well, but I'll tee it up and then we'll expand upon it. So one of the things I'm very excited about in the previous AFRI RFA was the partnership, the extension partnership with Climate Hubs. Now, last year, we invested $9 million. We made 6 awards of $1.5 million each that really link up state extension services with at least one of the Climate Hubs. There are 10 Climate Hubs out there that are managed by either ARS or the Forest Service. And so last year we established these partnerships. We were the glue through our investment that brought one of these parties together to working with another one. So those are in a formative stage at this point in time. They're working together. What this does is it allows the extension service to not only be an extension of their related land grant institution, but now an extension of Climate Hubs. In the current RFA for AFRI, there's another round of that. So those proposals are being evaluated right now, and we're anticipating making additional awards to, again, these partnerships. Now, really, the gist of the question was about a clearinghouse or trying to organize our body of knowledge that we have that extension uses, so to better link up to, or provide that to stakeholders. So the thing that I'm also excited about in the current AFRI RFA was creation of another funding opportunity called the Climate Smart Extension Cap. That's under, those proposals are being evaluated now, but we're anticipating making a single extension cap award of $10 million to actually form or serve partly as this clearinghouse role of trying to pull together valuable educational information for extension services to use related to climate. And so that's in the works right now. And hopefully here in a few months or so, we'll be able to announce an award and get that work underway. So that's what we have going on right now. I don't know if I missed out on any points, Megan, on that, but that is something that I'm quite excited about.
Okay, I will address this next question to Kevin as well. There have been previous NIFA programs that were partnerships with other federal agencies such as NSF, AI Institutes program. Are there plans for NIFA to work with other agencies on climate resilience programs or interagency working groups?
Yes, yes, and we're in those discussions now as well. We're currently reviewing proposals as a great example that you brought up, the AI institutes. So that's a collaboration with the National Science Foundation. They also have AI institutes, and through that single efficient RFA, we partner and work with NSF for those proposals that come in that are relevant to NIFA's mission area and agriculture. We evaluate those, and then we've been funding some of those very large projects, very large commitments on artificial intelligence. We're actually looking at proposals for AI institutes, another round of that right now. And we work with NSF in other ways as well, whether it's data science or other things that we have mutual interest. We will continue to work with these other agencies. Some of those will, in addition, be National Science Foundation, but we're also working and collaborating with other federal agencies, such as the Department of Energy. NIFA has several examples where we have funded projects, for example, in agrivoltaics. And so that's this double land use of collecting solar energy, but also having an agricultural operation or farming practice on the same ground. So Department of Energy, through their CETO, Solar Energy Technology Office, and NIFA, we have interest in that, and we do have monthly meetings. We communicate and coordinate with one another in working in those areas and promote or make sure stakeholders are aware of both of our programs as they come forward. So that's one example. It might be on bioenergy. So the Department of Energy's Bioenergy Technology Office, sustainable aviation fuels is a priority for area for NIFA, and we collaborate with BETO on that. So yes, there are examples where we certainly partner with other federal agencies.
Well, and I'll add that my official title is National Science Liaison for Climate Change. And so really what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is specifically working for outreach with other agencies within USDA and across the federal government. And sometimes there really are logistic issues of combining pots of money from different organizations, but we're seeking to elevate to cross-advertise opportunities, whether they're, for example, from National Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. We're trying to make sure stakeholders are aware not just of what's going on at NIFA, but what's going on in other agencies, and to connect those dots, make sure our stakeholders, the other agencies know about our stakeholders, are keeping universities in mind as they develop opportunities. And so may not always be official joint funding mechanisms, but increasingly we're trying to share that information and to elevate the university community and what you bring to the table in terms of research, education, and extension, and the impacts that that can have for climate change mitigation and adaptation.
Thank you both. Next question is in regards to the rapid response RFA, and they were wondering if there would be a 2023 rapid response RFA for extreme weather events.
Well, we are working on the FY23 AFRI RFA right now. I can't elaborate what will be in it. However, we can't do that until it's gone through a review and approval process, all the way up through the REE leadership. So I can't really elaborate on what will be in it at this time.
Thanks so much. I see some thank yous and some additional information, but no more specific questions.
I see those. I do want to thank Mark Schoenbeck for his comments, especially in regard to investments in organic. And if you'd like to have further visits with us and conversations about that, we'd be very happy to do so. So just reach out and we can have a broader conversation. Thank you, Mark.
That is all we have for now. We have about 8 minutes left. I will hand it back to Megan and Kevin to close us out.
Well, perhaps as I talk, additional questions will come in or comments. I counted a peak of 76 people that joined us here today, and there's still a lot of those that are still listening in and contributing to this. Actually, it was more than you listening in. There were these questions that we've been getting and comments are so very helpful to us and valued. And certainly there will be more. I'm anticipating that as we get out and attend meetings, or maybe emails will come in, that there will be other dialogue that continues after this webinar. I want to tell you we welcome that. And I want to, just as we wrap this up, give you my sincere thanks for joining us today. Megan, if you have any additional items, now would be the time.
Yeah, just a big thank you for joining us and really expressing how excited we are to be working on this, having this plan approved and out there for everybody to see and to participate in. I've been involved in climate adaptation planning with USDA for the last dozen years. And I've just really seen the evolution of enthusiasm and commitment and resource allocation for really tackling these issues in a more increasingly concrete way. And so, of course, it's a work in progress. Nothing's perfect. It's a continuous iteration, as Dr. Kephart had pointed out in the presentation, but we're really excited to be on this journey. We believe that we can make a difference, and we can make that difference, we think, hand in hand with our stakeholders. So thank you for supporting us and being part of the process. And we invite follow-up conversations. NIFA is open for conversation. So please contact Kevin, contact me, provide input, because we want to hear for you and serve you. Thanks.
I'll just, Keisha, make one last comment before we wrap up. In the climate adaptation plan, or there was a slide about it as well, you probably saw a list of a lengthy list of people at NIFA that were involved, 30, maybe 40 people, several people. And they were all across the NIFA organizational structure. All 4 of our science institutes, we had people in our OGFM divisions that were involved. So it was really a great team effort. And I want to say that we're so proud of this plan that we've put forward. So happy to be here today, and happy to be, as we talked about, continuous improvement, learning from it, and making a difference through our investments. Thank you.